Hello everyone, welcome to my SQL learning series. In this series, we are going to learn SQL from beginner level to advanced level with practical examples. So SQL is one of the most important skills if you want to become a data analyst, data engineer, or BI developer or data scientist. So almost every company stores their data in databases, and SQL is the language we use to interact with those databases. For example, Amazon stores customer orders in a database. Banks store transaction data in a database. Companies store employee data in a database. And SQL helps us retrieve, update, insert, and manage this data. So today in day one, we'll cover the basic of SQL. So first of all, what we'll understand. So first of all, we'll understand what is a database. So first, So a database is simply a collection of data that is stored in an organized way. You can think of it like an Excel file. For example, suppose we have a table that stores employee information and how the structure would be look like. So the basic structure would be it would store employee ID, name and country. So here you can see one small table structure which contains employee ID, name, and country. So you can see the row represents records and column represents attributes. So columns are employee ID, name, and country. In SQL, we call columns as an attributes and rows as in records. So a database contains multiple tables like this. So first of all, we'll understand and we'll practice how to create database. So let me just. To create the database, the syntax is very simple. So we just have to write create database, whatever name you want to give. So I'll give I'll give practice, practice database, SQL practice. So as you can see, the commands completed successfully. We have successfully created a database. And now inside this database, we'll store different tables. So to use this database, we just have to write the command use database name, which is SQL practice. So now you can see commands completed successfully. Now whatever table will create, it will store inside this database. So let's first understand the core of the SQL. First, we'll start with the how we can create a table inside the SQL. So for that, we have a simple command called create table. So let's practice the syntax. So to create a table, we just have to write the syntax create table. So SQL is, as you can see, the SQL is very easy. All the commands are simply in the English language. So to create the table, we can say create table and we'll have to assign the table name and then we'll have to assign the column 1, its data type. And if you want to give any constant, you can give constant as well. So for now, we'll just assigning data type, then column 2, its data type, how we are gonna store that value, column 3, its data type. So, so this was just a structure. Let's create a real table. So create table called employees. So this was the table name. Create table, table name. Then we'll start the parenthesis. Inside the parenthesis, we'll assign the column's name. So our first column would be employee ID. And after assigning the column name, we have to give its data type. How we're gonna store the values inside the employee ID. So as the name suggests, it is an ID column. So we'll store the data in the integer format. So for that, we'll use the int data type. Now the column 2 would be after ID will in the table must have name of that employee. So we'll say employee name, and name will be in the string format. So we'll use the data type as a varchar. And when we are using the data type varchar, we have to assign the size also. So we'll assign the size 100. So it can store up to 100 digits. 100 alphabets, sorry. Now after employee name, we'll give the employee table should also contain the address of that employee. So we'll give the country. So from which country that employee belongs. So to store the country, we'll use the data type again varchar, and we'll assign the size 50. So as you can see, it's saying commands completed successfully. We have successfully created a table called employee, which is containing columns employee ID, employee name, and country. So now we understood how to create a table. Now we'll be talking about constants. What is constant and how it is useful? So constant are basically a rules applied on columns. Constant. So the first constant which we would be studying about will be not null. So as the name suggests, if you assign the not null constants to a specific column, it means that column cannot contain any null values. So let's just practice this with the syntax. So suppose we are creating a table, create table, employees, employee ID, assign data type, and now we'll assign the constant. We'll assign not null. What does it mean? It means the employee ID column cannot contain any null values. Every row should must have any values. Now same name and country. For name also will assign not null. It means the name column cannot contain any null value. Every row must have any value. And let's close the parenthesis. You will see we'll get error. I'll explain why we got the error. So you can see it's saying there is already an object named employees in the database. So inside a database, we cannot store two objects with same name. So we have also, as you saw, we already created the employees table. And again, we are writing the syntax to create table as employees. So these two objects have similar name. So the database will throw error and it won't store the same name. So what we'll have to do, we'll just drop the previous table, drop table employees. Now this table has been dropped from the database. Now we can easily create this table, just execute the command. So commands completed successful. So we'll talk about the drop command soon in our upcoming SQL series. So now we'll just focus on the next constant, which is unique. So as the name suggests, unique stores only the unique values. What does it mean? Let's practice with the syntax. Create table employees employee ID data type, and the constant would be this time unique. So what does it mean? It means an employee name varchar 100, and I'm giving this constant as a not null. Varchar. Okay. So what does unique means here? So in the employee ID, every row should contain a unique value. So it cannot contain any duplicate value. So let's just run this command. Before running the command, we'll drop the table employee. Now we'll just run this command. Now we have successfully created a table structure called employee with employee ID and employee name. Employee ID will only contain the unique values, and employee name would not contain any null values. So now we'll practice another constant, which is a very important one, is a primary key. So it is basically a combination of not null and unique. It means if we are assigning a constant called primary key, then that column would not be able to contain any null values. At the same time, it will contain all the unique values. Let's just practice this with the syntax, not null and plus unique. So we'll create a table, create table employees, where employee ID data would be int and the constant would be primary key. Primary key. And employee name varchar 100. Not none. So before that, we'll just drop this table. And forgot again that. Yeah. So the commands completed successfully. So whenever we'll store the value inside the employee ID, all the values inside the employee ID should be unique and should not contain any null values. And the same goes to employee name. It cannot contain any null values. So now we'll be practicing another constant called foreign key. It is a very important constant. It is used to reference two tables. So it basically helps to link one table with another table. So let's just practice it with the syntax. Create table employees employees employee ID int primary key name varchar. So before creating employee, we'll create one table called department. As I said, foreign key is used to link the two tables. So we'll create one more table called department. Create table department and inside the department there should be department ID, which would be in integer data type, and we'll give primary key as a constant. Our second column would be department name. We'll give varchar. So we have successfully created a table called department. Now we'll reference it with the employee table. So now to reference it, the employee table should contain the department ID column. So using that, we can join these department employee table. So department ID, we'll be storing it as an int. And now comes foreign key. Foreign key will be applied on department ID, and it references to department table on department ID. So what it will do here, it will link the department table with this department ID column. So let's just run this command so that I'll just drop this table. So it's saying there is already an object called department. Let me just drop it. Drop table department. So now I'll execute this command. So as you see, the commands completed successfully. So now we have created two tables called department and employees, and we have been referenced this department table with employee using foreign key. I hope you understood the concept of foreign key and primary key. We'll be discussing this in detail in our upcoming videos. So now we'll be practicing our next command, which is default constraint. So what does default constant do? So when we assign any default constant with the column, then what it does, it assigns a default value. So for example, let's create one table, create table called employees, parenthesis start, employee ID, and name, varchar, 100, country. We'll give their type as a varchar, 100, so we'll assign the size 100, and we'll assign the constant default. And after assigning the constant, we have to give the default value as well, what we want as a default value. So we'll give India. So what does it mean? It means whenever there is no value assigned to the column called country, it will automatically take the country name as in India. So let's just run this command. So you can see the commands completed successfully. Now to check this, we'll insert some values inside the table. To insert the values, we will use the command called insert into table name. It should be employees. employees. Then we'll start the parenthesis. And our first column is employee ID, which is the integer type. So we'll give first employee ID is a 1. And we'll give the name as Ramna. So whenever we are assigning the varchar value, we have to keep it inside the single quotes. And so our syntax would be insert into table name, and we'll have to just write values. So what values we are assigning? Now we'll just hit the execute button. So now we'll see how this default constant work. So for that, we'll write a constant. So now we'll see that how this default constant works. So for that, we'll insert values to this employee table. For that, we'll write a command called insert into. So using this command, we can insert the values inside the employee table. So we'll just write insert into employees, and then we'll give the column's name, and then we'll write the values command to insert the values inside these columns. So we'll just give 101 value to the employee ID and name for the name column. So you can see I have kept name inside the single quote. So whenever we are giving data type as a varchar, we have to keep that value inside a single quote. So let's just run this command. Yeah. So let me just execute it. Now just let's run this command. So you can see one row affected. So let's just see this table. For that, we'll use a select command. We're discussing about the select command in the upcoming video. Select all from employees. You can see we did not insert any value for the country column, but still we got the value called India in the country column because we assigned a constant called default, which automatically stores the default value as India. So I hope you understood the concept of default constant. Now we'll be discussing about our next constant called check constant. So what does check constant do? So we use check constant to check any specific condition. As you can see, I have written a command for the create table as a person. So here we are creating a table called person, and we are storing 3 columns: ID, name, and age. For age, the data type is int and the constant is check. So what we are doing here, we are checking age should be greater than 18. So let's just run this table. So sorry, let's just run this command to create this table. So yeah, so just hit the execute button. So our table has been successfully created. To check this, let's just insert few values inside this table. So we'll just write insert into command, assign the table name, and give the values, and inside the parenthesis we'll assign the values for the first column: ID, name, and age. Here the age is greater than 19. So let's just run the command. You can see one row affected. Now we'll just see the data. Select all from first cell. You can see we are getting ID as 1, name as ABC, age is 19. Now we'll insert another record, which will be 17, which is lesser than 18. Let's just execute this command. As I said, it's to error. What it's saying the insert statement conflicted with the check constant, check age. The conflict occurred in database called SQL practice and the table DBO called person. So you saw that here we assigned the constant called check, and when we are trying to store the values lesser than 80, it's throwing error. So I hope you understood the concept of check constant. Let's now move towards DDL commands. So what is DDL commands? So DDL basically stands for data definition language. Inside these there are four commands: create, alter, drop and truncate, which is used to define the objects. So now we'll be talking about our first command called create. So we have already seen the example of create a command, how we can create the objects and the table. So now we'll be practicing our second command, which is alter. So what is the use of the alter? So alter is used to modify an existing table. Suppose we have a table called person, and here we have only three columns: ID, name and age. And if we want to add one more column, so we can use alter command. So instead of dropping the table and creating the structure again, we can just use the alter command and we can just add one new column. Alter table persons. Add address as varchar. Now we'll just execute this command. And now we'll see the table. You saw we did not have to drop the table and again recreate the structure. We can easily add any number of columns using the alter command. So you can see that previously the table structure had only three columns: ID, name, age, but using the altered table we added one more column called address. As for now we haven't assigned any value inside the address, so it is storing the value as a null. So now we'll discuss about our next DDL command, which is drop. So you might have seen in the video, I have been using the drop command. So what it basically does. So drop command used to delete table permanently. So when we use drop command, it deletes the table permanently. So let's just practice this. So suppose we wanna So now we'll talk about our next DDL command, which is drop. You have been seeing in the videos I have been using this drop command. So what does drop do? So drop is used to drop the table permanently. So using drop command, drop table persons, we can permanently delete this table from this database. Even there won't be any structure of the tables. So it will just permanently drop the table. So now we have executed the command. Now when we'll look for this table, it would say invalid object name persons, because when it is looking the persons table inside the database, it is unable to find this because we have already dropped it using the drop command. So I hope you got the concept of the drop command. Now I will be discussing our next DDL command, which is truncate. So what is the use of truncate? So truncate deletes all records from the table, but it does not delete the table structure. So let's create this. We have already dropped the person table. Let's create table person again. Now when we'll select for the table, it will show the structure. And now we'll insert values table. So now you can see inside the table person, we have the values for these three columns. Now I will truncate this table. So to truncate the table, we just have to simply write the command truncate table name for persons. So you can see the message command completed successfully. Let's just now try to see the table. From So you can see the difference between the drop and truncate. When we use a truncate command, it did not deleted the table completely. What it did, it just deleted all the records from the table and kept the table structure as it is. So in the many interviews, the interviewer asks what is the difference between the drop and the truncate command. So we can say the drop command completely drops the table and the table structure. It permanently deletes the table from the database, whereas the truncate command only deletes the record from the table and leave the table structure as it is. So that's all for the today's class. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Thank you for watching the video and see you in the next class where we'll be going where we'll go in the details of the SQL. Let's meet you in the next class.